All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're opening an active investigation. Case files 730-Z. We're looking at a subject whose behavior went from normal to, well, completely off the rails in just 1 month. The evidence we've put together is, frankly, alarming. Let's get into the data.
Look at this, 14 hours and 42 minutes. That's not a week, that's a single day, day 30 to be exact. This is the final entry in our subject's log, the culmination of a month-long spiral. I mean, think about that. That's more time spent on a screen than a person spends at 2 full-time jobs.
And that's the central mystery we're here to solve. How does this happen? How does a person go from just a regular user to this in only 30 days? What's really going on behind the screen? We're going to follow the evidence and find out. Okay, so let's start with the primary evidence. We're going to walk through the subject's own log, the timeline of this descent, and see exactly how this escalation happened step by step. The progression here is just staggering. Day 1, it starts at 6 hours. The subject just calls it a mild distraction. But by day 10, it's already up to 9 hours a day, and the first red flags appear: insomnia and phantom vibrations. You know that feeling that your phone is buzzing in your pocket when it's not even there? Then we get to day 20, 12 hours, and now the subject is reporting serious brain fog and anxiety. And by day 30, well, the subject describes his own mental state with a single word: zombie. So this brings us to the core of the investigation. Was this just a personal failure, a simple lack of willpower, or was this entire escalation engineered? All the evidence we found points to one conclusion: this was by design. And here we have what is essentially a confession. This is from Chamath Palihapitiya, a former top exec at Facebook. He admitted, in his own words, that they created dopamine-driven feedback loops. He's not talking about building communities. He's talking about hijacking brain chemistry. This statement tells you everything you need to know about the intent. And this is the target. What you're looking at are the brain's fundamental reward pathways. This isn't just a textbook diagram. You should see it as the scene of the crime. These are the exact neural circuits being exploited, the same ones that light up from things like drugs and gambling. These are the levers they're pulling. So how exactly do they pull those levers? Well, they use a psychological trick that was perfected in casinos. It's called a variable reward schedule. And make no mistake, it is the exact same principle that makes a slot machine one of the most addictive things on the planet. It's the unpredictability of the reward that gets you hooked and keeps you checking over and over and over again. Let's look at a textbook example of this in action. According to Harvard research, here's how a platform like Instagram can weaponize this principle. So you post a photo. Step 2, the algorithm intentionally holds back your likes. This creates a little bit of anxiety, a negative feeling. You check, and there's nothing. Then step 4, all of a sudden the likes are released in one big flood. That sudden swing from disappointment to validation creates a massive dopamine rush, way bigger than if the likes had just come in one by one. Your brain registers this as a huge reward, and the habit gets locked in. It's just pure calculated manipulation. Now, so far, we've really been focused on the psychological side of things, but the evidence log from week 3, it contains an entry that changes everything. It elevates this case from just a bad habit to tangible physical harm. So let's go back to that log. It's week 3. The subject is now clocking 12 hours a day on his screen. And this is where a new and really disturbing symptom gets reported. The subject reports what he calls brain fog. An inability to concentrate, to think clearly. He says he can't even read a book for more than a couple of minutes. It sounds kind of subjective, right? Almost like it's all in his head. And this brings us to what might be the single most critical question of this entire investigation. Is brain fog just a feeling, or is it a sign that something is physically changing, maybe even degrading, inside the subject's brain? Well, the scientific literature gives us a chillingly clear answer. This peer-reviewed study published in Frontiers in Psychiatry confirms our worst fears. The brain fog isn't just a feeling. It actually correlates with measurable physical changes to the brain. Specifically, a reduction in gray matter volume. Let that sink in for a second. The brain is physically changing. Now, with this piece of evidence, actual physical alteration, our entire perspective on this case has to shift. It's time to throw out the old assumptions and deliver a verdict. This is the turning point. The myth, the story we tell ourselves, is that this is about laziness. It's a lack of willpower.
But the reality, based on the evidence, is something else entirely. It's not laziness, it's manipulation. It's not a lack of willpower, it's algorithmic exploitation. And most importantly, this is not just a personal failing, it's a condition tied to the physical alteration of the human brain. The subject isn't weak, they're a victim. And if you have any doubt, listen to the subject's own testimony from day 30. He says, "I physically can't put it down." He knows he should stop, but the control is gone. He is describing almost perfectly the definition of addiction. So, based on the overwhelming weight of evidence, psychological and physical, our investigation can only end with one final stark diagnosis and a clear course of action. The official diagnosis is dopamine downregulation. What does that mean in plain English? It means the brain's reward pathways have been so overstimulated, so flooded, that they've essentially burned out. They've become less sensitive. This is why our subject feels like a zombie with zero motivation. The very system in his brain that creates drive and pleasure is now compromised.
And when you combine the severe psychological symptoms with the hard evidence of physical brain changes, the prognosis is critical. This isn't something that's going to fix itself. This requires immediate intervention. Which brings us to our final file entry, the prescription. It's simple and it's absolute. An immediate, full digital reset is required. At this point, the only question left isn't if the subject needs to disconnect, but how in the world he can possibly manage to do it. Case closed.